I watched a legend die before my eyes. On August 27, 1976, Nitsak climbed onto the deck of the Calypso, his empty shell adrift. The man who had descended 3 hours earlier was consumed by a thirst for discovery. The one who had returned, unable to stand without support, was shaking with a fine tremor, and his famous blue eyes stared right through us, as if they saw something we were better off not knowing. The water temperature at 342 meters was 4 Celsius. Cousteau had been down there for 173 minutes, according to the ship's clock. As we began to unzip his wetsuit, he suddenly grabbed my wrist with such force that I cried out. He tried to speak, but only hoarse sounds came out. Then he uttered one phrase in French. "They've been watching us from the very beginning." An hour later, Cousteau personally burned all the dive notes in the ship's furnace. 4 hours later, he ordered the captain to immediately abandon the point and set course for the Maldives. The Soviet part of the expedition, including me, was sent home early, signing non-disclosure agreements. Of the 8 people who knew the exact coordinates of that dive, 2 committed suicide within a year. 3 more left oceanography forever and refused to speak of that day. I'm the last one left, and I'll tell the truth before it's too late. If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave your opinion in the comments. Let's get started. My name is Viktor Solovyov, and in 1976 I was 29 years old. I have a PhD, a promising employee of the Shirshov Institute of Oceanology and a specialist in deep-sea biology. I've dreamed of the ocean since childhood, when my father, a naval officer, brought me Cousteau's book on underwater exploration. Jacques-Yves was my idol, an unattainable star, the man who revealed to the world the beauty of the deep sea. And here I was, standing on the deck of his legendary vessel, the Calypso, as part of a Soviet-French expedition, watching this man transform into a ghost. The day had begun normally. Breakfast at 7 a.m., briefing at 8 a.m. Cousteau was in high spirits, even joking that today we would discover a new species of octopus and name it after me. Philippe Tay, the chief cameraman, checked the cameras. André Laban, our bathyscaphe engineer, double-checked all the systems. Everything was perfect. The sea was as calm as a mirror. The sky was clear, visibility excellent. We were at 423. South latitude, 7257 east longitude, approximately 200 miles south of the Maldives. The echo sounder showed a depth of 480 meters. The bottom relief was flat, unremarkable. Cousteau Tay and I were supposed to descend in the bathyscaphe to 350 meters to investigate a cold current that, according to our previous measurements, appeared in this area for no apparent reason. A routine scientific task, routine work. At 14:03, the bathyscaphe detached from the cable and began its descent. Cousteau sat by the main porthole. I was to his right, Tay behind with the camera. The first 50 meters passed as usual. The sunlight pierced the water with greenish rays. Schools of fish and jellyfish swam past. Hundreds of meters away, I noticed. The first oddity, the fish had completely disappeared. It was as if someone had drawn an invisible line and said, "There is no life beyond." Cousteau frowned and wrote in his notebook. "This is wrong," he said in French, then repeated in Russian. "I should be seeing tuna and barracuda here. Where have they gone?" Taylor suggested that perhaps the temperature anomaly was affecting their behavior. We continued our descent. At 150 meters, the sensors showed a sharp jump in temperature. The water had cooled by 8 degrees Celsius in just 20 meters of depth. This was impossible. In tropical waters, the thermocline can't be that steep. Cousteau ordered us to slow down. We were now moving slowly, meter by meter. At 200 meters, a glow began. At first, I thought it was bioluminescence, but no, it was something else. The light wasn't coming from living organisms, but as if from the water itself. A pale blue, pulsating glow emanating from the bottom. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. I'd been studying oceanography for 10 years, dived dozens of times, and never seen anything like it. Taylor started filming, but his hands were shaking. "Monsieur Cousteau, maybe we should turn back?" This looks dangerous. Cousteau shook his head. No, we have to see the source. Let's continue. At 250 meters, the glow intensified so much that it became painful to look. We covered our eyes with our hands. Continuing to move downward, I heard a sound. No, not heard. Felt a low-frequency hum that penetrated not my ears, but directly into my bones. Into my skull, into my teeth. As if someone had activated a giant resonator somewhere deep beneath me. Tay groaned, I can't. My head is splitting, I can't film. Cousteau didn't react. He looked down into the blue, pulsating abyss, and there was an expression on his face that I will never forget. A mixture of delight and horror, he knew. Even then, he knew that we had found something that would change everything. At 300 meters, the glow began to weaken, and we were able to open our eyes fully. What we saw made me forget about breathing. Down at the bottom lay a structure, enormous, geometrically perfect, clearly artificial. My brain refused to comprehend its size. It stretched for at least 100 meters, rising some 20 meters above the seabed. The surface was smooth, metallic, but without a single spot of rust or fouling. No shells, no algae, no coral, as if it had been lowered here yesterday. The shape was strange. Not a ship, not a submarine, not a plane wreck, something like an elongated oval with multifaceted protrusions on the sides. The angles were too sharp to be natural, the lines too straight. And symbols. Symbols were etched all over the surface. Not letters, not numbers, not hieroglyphs, something completely alien. Geometric signs that seemed to move when you stared at them for long enough. My God, whispered Cousteau, this can't be real, but it was real. The depth sensors showed 338 meters. Sonar indicated that the object was hidden under a 3-meter-thick layer of seafloor sediment. This meant it had been here for at least hundreds, if not thousands of years. Ty drops the camera. His face is gray, his eyes wide. We need to rise now. This is wrong. This is all wrong. Cousteau isn't listening. He orders the engineer to lower. It's even lower, closer to the object. I want to object, but the words stick in my throat. Part of me wants to rise, too, to get as far away from here as possible, but another part, scientific and curious, thirsts to know. The bathyscaphe slowly descends. 340 meters, 341, 342. We hover 5 meters above the structure's surface. I see that. It's not just metal. The material seems alive, shimmering with shades that don't exist in nature. Cousteau reaches for the manipulator and extends the bathyscaphe's mechanical arm. I understand what he's about to do and want to stop him, but it's too late. The manipulator touches the surface of the object. The next moment there's a flash. Blinding, bright, as if someone turned on a spotlight right in front of the porthole. I close my eyes and shout, TV? That's French for TV. A beam of light emerges from the structure and begins to scan the bathyscaphe. It passes over the hull, over the portholes, over us. When the beam reaches my face, I feel a presence. As if someone has looked into my head, scrolled through all my thoughts, memories, fears in a second, and discarded them as unnecessary. The sensation is so intimate and terrifying that I want to scream, but I can't. My throat is in spasm. Cousteau sits motionless. The beam lingers on him longer, 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Time has ceased to matter. When the beam finally goes out, Cousteau slowly turns his head towards me. An expression of utter devastation is on his face. Ascend, he says quietly. Ascend immediately and never come back here. I don't remember the ascent, only the pain, terrible pain in my joints. In my bones, in every cell of my body. We ascended too fast without decompression stops, breaking all the rules. Cousteau shouted into the intercom, demanding maximum ascent speed. Tay lost consciousness. I held on with all my strength. When the bathyscaphe reached the surface at 2:47 p.m., I saw all the clocks on the instrument panel stop, frozen on one number. I looked at my wristwatch. It had stopped too. Then I was dragged onto the deck, and I fell into darkness. To understand why that dive changed my life so dramatically, I have to go back to 1975. Then I was a young scientist with shining eyes. I believed in science and progress, in the fact that man can conquer any depth. It all started with a phone call. January, Moscow, my communal room on Lenin Hills. I was sorting through plankton samples, collected during an expedition to the Black Sea, when the phone rang in the hallway. My neighbor, Anklava, knocked on my door. "Vitya, is there an official voice on the phone for you?" I took off my rubber gloves, went out, and picked up the receiver. "Comrade Solovyov, this is the International Cooperation Department of the Academy of Sciences. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, please report to 14 Leninsky Prospect, Office 307. Bring your passport and work record book. No late arrivals." Click. Beeps. I stood there with the receiver in my hand, not understanding what had happened. International cooperation. I had no request, no inquiries. The next day I showed up at the appointed time. A gray building, long corridors, the smell of government-issued furniture and old papers. Office 307 turned out to be spacious, with a portrait of Lenin on the wall and a huge desk behind which sat a man of about 50 in a formal suit. Next to him sat another man, a young, athletic man in a leather jacket. He didn't introduce himself, but I immediately realized it was KGB. They have a special way of looking at you, as if they can see right through you. "Sit down, Comrade Solovyov." The man at the desk nodded. "My name is Pyotr Ivanovich Gromov. I oversee scientific exchanges with capitalist countries." "You're probably wondering why we called you." "Frankly, yes." Gromov opened the folder and leafed through a few pages. "Your PhD dissertation on deep-sea cephalopods impressed your Western colleagues. Veich's article received high marks. France has requested Soviet specialists from us for a joint expedition. They specifically requested you?" I felt my heart beat. "Faster, France, what expedition?" "A joint Soviet-French project to explore the Indian Ocean. The French leader is Jacques-Yves Cousteau." "Have you heard of him? Have I?" "Cousteau has been my idol since I was 13. Yes, of course, he's a legend of oceanography." "A KGB man speaking up for the first time? A legend, you say?" "We call him an agent of influence. Cousteau works with the CIA, with French intelligence. His expeditions often cover reconnaissance missions." I was confused. "Then why?" Gromov interrupted. "Because refusing to participate in such a project is politically unfavorable. The USSR must demonstrate that we are open to scientific collaboration, but we must be confident in the reliability of our people. So the question is, are you ready to represent Soviet science on this expedition?" I didn't hesitate for a second. "I am ready." The next 3 weeks were a complete test. An interview with the KGB, a background check of all relatives up to the 3rd generation, a medical examination, psychological tests, safety briefings. They explained to me that I wasn't just a scientist, I was a representative of the Soviet system. Any careless word could be used against the USSR. In February, I was summoned to the institute. There were about 20 people in the conference room, oceanographers, biologists, hydrologists, and among them, standing by the window, was he, Jacques Cousteau himself, tall, thin, with gray hair and the famous Little Red Riding Hood, his blue eyes were lively, inquisitive. He spoke to our director through an interpreter, but it was clear he was eager to get started. When I was introduced, Cousteau came up and shook my hand firmly. "Victor, yes, I read your article on Vampiroteuthis. Excellent work. I need people like you on my team. People who aren't afraid to stare into the abyss." I muttered something in response. My English was at the level of technical texts. My conversational language was lacking. Cousteau smiled. "Number. Matter? At sea, it's not words that matter, but understanding. We'll understand each other." A week later, a 5-person Soviet group flew to Karachi. From there, we were transferred to the Maldives, where the Calypso was moored. I first saw this legendary vessel at sunset. Its white hull, its tall mast with the Calypso flag, and its distinctive observation deck on the bow. When I boarded, I felt like a boy in a fairy tale. The crew was international, French, Americans, an Australian, and an Italian, all tanned in their winning T-shirts with that special ease of people who live by the sea. Cousteau walked me around the ship, showed me the laboratory, The cabins, the bathyscaphe, the decompression chamber, and told me about previous expeditions, their discoveries, and the mysteries of the ocean they had uncovered. You know, Victor, the ocean isn't just water and fish. It's a separate world, a living, breathing one. It holds secrets we don't even suspect. Sometimes I think we're too arrogant, considering ourselves masters of the planet. The ocean takes up 70% of the earth. Who's the master? US or him? I nodded, not fully understanding where he was going with this. I thought it was just philosophizing. The first month on the Calypso was paradise. We explored coral reefs, studied whale migrations, and filmed dolphins. Cousteau turned out to be not only a brilliant scientist, but also a charismatic leader. He knew how to inspire, to infect you with enthusiasm. You wanted to work with him, you wanted to discover new things, but there was another side to him, too. Sometimes he would stand by the side of the ship at night, looking at the dark water and smoking his pipe. One day I couldn't sleep, went out for some fresh air, and saw him there. "I can't sleep, Victor, it's stuffy in the cabin." He nodded and took a drag on his pipe. "You know what always scared me about the ocean? No sharks, no storms, emptiness. When you dive to the depths, there comes a moment when you realize you're completely alone, surrounded by darkness, and the nearest person is a few kilometers above you. And in that darkness, anything could be anything." I said nothing. His tone was strange, almost alarming. "Do you believe we're alone in the universe?" he asked suddenly. I shrugged. Statistically, probably not. Too many stars, too. Many planets. And if they were here on Earth long ago, millions of years ago, and left traces, I didn't know what to say. Cousteau chuckled. "Forgive me, I'm philosophizing." "Insomnia. Go to bed, Victor. Tomorrow we dive." I left, but I remember this conversation. I didn't attach any importance to it then. Now I understand. He already knew something or suspected something. Weeks passed, we worked, explored, filmed. I got used to the crew, to the rhythm of life on the ship, Cousteau with his strange questions at night. I thought it would always be like this, that this was a dream job that would last for years. But in August of 1976, everything changed. That very telegram arrived. Early in the morning of August 20th, the radio operator brought Cousteau the telegram. I was on deck, checking the equipment for a planned dive, when I saw Cousteau reading the message. His face changed, the relaxed expression gave way to tension. His lips pressed into a thin line. He folded the telegram, stuffed it in his pocket, and walked quickly to his cabin. Half an hour later, his voice came over the intercom. "All command. Personnel were to assemble in the wardroom immediately." There were 8 of us. Captain Maris Dupont, Navigator André Laban, Chief Engineer Roger Simon, Operator Philippe Tail, Dr. Jean-Paul Bernard, Hydrologist Michel Cartier, and 2 from the Soviet side, myself and Georgy Petrov, a specialist in deep-sea geology. Cousteau stood by the map spread out on the table. His fingers drummed on the tabletop. The only sign of nervousness. "Gentlemen, we have had a change of plans. I received information from an old friend, a fisherman from the Maldives. He reported a strange anomaly in the area, which the locals have been avoiding for many years. Place where there are no fish, where the water behaves unusually? I want to check it out." Captain Dupont frowned. "Monsieur Cousteau, we have a schedule. We should arrive at the Sickles in 3 days to film the next episode." "I know, Maris, but this could be important, very important. I asked for 3 days." We'll check this point, and if nothing interesting happens, we will continue as planned." Dupont looked at the others. We exchanged glances. Cousteau had authority. You didn't argue with him. If he considered it necessary, then it was necessary. "Okay," the captain agreed. 3 days. What are the coordinates?" Cousteau handed a sheet of paper to Dupont. I saw the captain squint, studying the numbers. "This is quite far from our current route. At least a day's march, then we leave in an hour, prepare the vessel." The meeting adjourned. I approached Cousteau when the others had dispersed. "Monsieur Cousteau, what is this anomaly? Can you tell me more?" He looked at me for a long moment, as if assessing whether I could be trusted. "Victor, Do you believe in miracles? I believe in science. Science can also be a miracle? Wait, you'll see for yourself soon. The Calypso set course south. We spent the entire next day sailing in the open ocean. The weather was perfect, clear skies, a light breeze, calm seas. The political atmosphere on board was becoming increasingly tense. Cousteau kept checking the maps, writing things down in his notebook, double-checking the coordinates. That evening I found him in the radio room. He was sending an encrypted message. When he saw me, he quickly turned off the transmitter. Victor, do you need something? He was just passing by. Who did you contact? He paused, then said, with a person who can confirm or deny the information. I hope for the former. I didn't insist, but anxiety was growing inside. Something was wrong. Cousteau was acting strangely, secretively. This didn't look like ordinary scientific curiosity. On the second day of the journey, it began. First, the compass. Navigator Laban noticed that the needle began to deviate from the course. First by 2, then by 5, then by 10. He rechecked the device, replaced the batteries, but the deviation continued. Monsieur Cousteau, we have a problem. The compass is going crazy. Cousteau came into the wheelhouse and looked at the instrument. A smile flickered across his face. No problem. We're on the right track. Continue on the set course, use the GPS. Then the echo sounder. Hydrologist Cartier called us all to his screen. The echo sounder was showing strange things. The depth was changing erratically. 400 meters, then suddenly 800, then 400 again, then complete emptiness. As if there was no bottom beneath us? Not a bottom? This is impossible, Cartier muttered. The relief can't change like that. Either the instrument is broken or there is something beneath us that is distorting the signal. Something big and dense. Cousteau leaned over the screen. What is the current depth? Cartier looked at the readings. 480 meters, stable for the last 10 minutes. The bottom is flat, but these anomalies. Write down all the data, we will need it. I couldn't last night fall asleep. I went out onto the deck, leaned against the side, and looked at the stars. The ocean was black, without a single glimmer. The moon had disappeared behind the clouds. The silence was absolute. Not even the waves made a noise. Suddenly I felt I wasn't alone. I turned around. Tay was standing a few meters away, smoking a cigarette. His face was tense. Victor, don't you find this strange? What exactly? Everything, this mission, the behavior, Cousteau, the instruments. I have a bad feeling about this, I shrugged. We are scientists, we study anomalies, that's our job. He took a drag on his cigarette, then threw the butt into the water. I've been working with Cousteau for 12 years. I've seen him in different situations, but never like this. He's afraid or waiting for something. I can't understand what. We were silent. Then Tay said quietly, if he offers me a dive tomorrow, I'll refuse, even if he fires me. Something is wrong here, Victor. Something is very wrong. But in the morning, when Cousteau announced the composition of the dive team, Taya did not refuse. No one refused because we were scientists, because curiosity was stronger than fear. Until we arrived at the point on August 26th at noon. Calypso froze in the water. Cousteau ordered to drop anchor, although the depth was too great for a regular anchor. Laban used a special weight with a buoy. Monsieur Cousteau, we are here. Coordinates 42 minutes south latitude, 72:57 minutes east longitude. Depth 480 meters. Cousteau stood at the bow, looking at the water. The sea was calm, nothing unusual. But he saw something that we did not see. Prepare the biv, we dive tomorrow. At dawn, that evening, I went into Cousteau's cabin. I wanted to ask about the details of tomorrow's dive. The door was slightly open. I saw him sitting at the table, writing a letter. An ordinary letter with pen and paper. When he finished, he sealed the envelope and wrote something on the front. I knocked. He quickly shoved the envelope into the desk drawer. Victor, come in. I entered, but my gaze lingered on the drawer. For a split second, I managed to read the inscription on the envelope. French words. Ouvrir ne mammer open in case of my death. My insides went cold. Monsieur Cousteau, what is this letter about? He looked at me calmly. A precaution, Victor. Just a precaution. Anything can happen at depth. But we've dived dozens of times. You've never written letters like this. He smiled sadly. This will be a special dive. I can feel it. If something goes wrong, the world must know the truth. The truth about what? He was silent for a long time, then said, that we are not alone. Victor, we have never been alone. And tomorrow we may have proof. On August 27th, I woke up feeling nauseous, not from stomach upset, but from some kind of internal discomfort, as if my body was trying to warn me of danger. I looked at my watch. 5 a.m. It was dark outside the cabin's porthole. Dawn hadn't broken yet. I splashed myself with cold water, trying to drive away the bad feeling, put on my overalls, and went out onto the deck. Cousteau and Laban were already there, checking the safety equipment. The yellow sphere with portholes seemed like a toy in the pre-dawn twilight. "Good morning, Victor. Ready to dive?" asked Cousteau. "How possible is that?" He nodded and continued inspecting the equipment. I noticed his hands were shaking. Just a little, almost imperceptibly, but I saw it. Jacques-Yves Cousteau, a man with thousands of hours underwater, was nervous. By 6 a.m., the entire team was assembled on deck. Captain DuPont gave the final briefing. The plan was simple: descend to a depth of 350 meters, conduct observations, take water and soil samples, and return in an hour. Standard procedure. But when Cousteau announced the composition of the group, objections began. "Only the three of us, myself, Victor, and Philippe," he said. "The rest remain on board." "Monsieur Cousteau, this is a violation of protocol," objected Captain DuPont. "The minimum crew for a deep-sea dive is 4 people. A reserve pilot is needed. The bathyscaphe is designed for 3. There will be no room for a 4th. Then one of you 3 will have to stay. It's a matter of safety." Cousteau looked at the captain sternly. "Maris, I am in command of this expedition. The decision has been made. The 3 of us are descending." Silence fell. No one dared argue with Cousteau when he used that tone. DuPont pursed his lips and nodded. "As you say, it's your responsibility." Taya came up to me while the final preparations were underway. "Victor, I have a bad feeling, a very bad one." "Maybe I shouldn't go? I was surprised." "Yesterday you yourself said that you wanted to see what was down there." "Yes, but today I don't." "No, something has changed." "The air is somehow different, or am I going crazy?" He wasn't going crazy. I felt it too. The atmosphere was oppressive, as if before a thunderstorm, although the sky was clear. The air pressure was normal, but it was hard to breathe. At 7 a.m., the sun rose above the horizon, red, huge, unusually bright. Cousteau looked at it, crossed himself. I didn't know he was a believer. "It's time," he said. We donned thermal suits, checked the communication system, climbed into bathyscaphe. It was cramped inside. 3 people, equipment, air tanks, instruments. It smelled of machine oil and rubber. Cousteau sat by the main porthole. I was to his right. Tay was behind with the camera. Laban closed the hatch and turned the locks. A dull metallic clunk. We were cut off from the world. Communication with the ship was only by radio. "Calypso is by bathyscaphe, ready to dive, requesting permission." DuPont's voice in the speaker was tense. "Bathyscaphe, permission granted. God bless you." A strange phrase for an atheist communist. But I remained silent. The winch started working, and the bathyscaphe was slowly lowered into the water. A light blow, a splash, and we went down. The first minutes everything was normal. The sunlight penetrated the water with green rays, creating a play of light and shadow. The temperature outside was 28 degrees. Visibility was excellent. A boat floated past a school of tuna, their silver sides flashing. "Depth 20 meters, pressure normal, all systems working," I reported over the radio. Cousteau was silent, looking down. His profile seemed carved out of stone. At 50 meters, the light began to fade. The green tint of the water was replaced by a dark blue. The temperature dropped to 24 degrees. A jellyfish the size of a car tire slowly swam past, transparent, glowing with a faint blue light. Tay began filming, commenting in French. His voice trembled with excitement or fear. At 70 meters, we entered a school of barocket. Hundreds of fish, long, silvery, with predatory snouts, surrounded bathyscaphe. They swam around us, curious but not aggressive. Then suddenly the school turned and rushed away upward as if escaping from something. That was the first warning. I felt a chill down my spine. Depth 100 meters. The fish had completely disappeared, as if we had crossed an invisible boundary. The water around was empty, lifeless. Not even plankton was visible in the spotlight beam. Monsieur Cousteau, this is strange. Where is all the living creatures? Cousteau answered. He leaned toward the porthole, peering into the depths. At 120 meters, the temperature gauge showed a sharp jump. 24 dropped to 16 in just 10 meters. It was impossible. Thermoclines don't work like that. Calypso, we have a temperature anomaly. A drop of 8 in 10 meters. Do you confirm the readings? Dupont's voice was alarmed. Bathyscaphe, we confirm your gauges are working properly. We recommend reducing your dive. Speed. Cousteau took the microphone. Calypso, the dive speed remains the same. We continue as planned. Monsieur Cousteau, perhaps we should listen to the captain? I don't, he insisted, but his voice betrayed his anxiety. He turned to me. There was something hard, unyielding in his eyes. Victor, we came here for answers. The answers are below. We continue. At 150 meters, the temperature dropped another 4 degrees, 12 degrees in tropical waters at such a depth. Absurd. I started writing down the instrument readings, but my hands were shaking. Tay was breathing heavily behind me. His camera was still running, but I heard him muttering a prayer in French, Our Father, who art in heaven. At 200 meters, a glow began. At first I thought it was bioluminescence, but no, the light was not coming from behind. It was coming from the depths, pale blue, pulsating like a slow heartbeat. Every 2 seconds, a flash, then fading, then a flash again. Bathyscaphe, what is this light? Dupont also saw it on the monitor. Unknown. We continue observation. The light intensified as dive. At 220 meters, it became so bright that I had to close my eyes. I felt the pulsation penetrate my body, synchronizing with my heartbeat. My pulse began to slow, adjusting to the rhythm of the light. This is wrong, Tay whispered. This is very wrong. We must rise now, Cousteau reacted. He looked down beyond the expression. There was a strange expression on his face, a mixture of horror and delight. He knew. I understood it at that moment. He knew what we would find below. He knew, and was moving towards it. At 250 meters, I heard a sound. No, not heard. Felt a low-frequency hum that was not perceived by the ears, but penetrated directly into the bones, into the skull, into the teeth. A vibration of such purity that it resonated with bone tissue. My head began to split. Tay groaned and dropped the camera. It fell to the floor of the bathyscaphe with a dull thud. I can't take it anymore. My head is splitting. Cousteau turned to him, grabbed him by the shoulders. Philippe, hold on a little longer. We are almost there. There? Where? We are simply sinking to the bottom? No, we are sinking towards the answer. At 280 meters, the glow began to weaken. The pulsation slowed. The hum became quieter. I opened. My eyes fully looked out the porthole and saw the bottom gray, smooth, covered with a thin layer of silt. But that wasn't what caught my attention. In the center of my field of vision, about 30 meters away, something lay on the bottom, something huge, dark, geometrically perfect. What? What is this? I whispered. Cousteau smiled, a strange, crazy smile. What I had been looking for all my life. We descended slowly, meter by meter, and the object grew in the porthole, filling the entire field of view. 300 meters, 310, 320. My consciousness refused to accept what my eyes saw. This could not be reality. There could not be something unknown, unexplored, impossible on the ocean floor. The structure was colossal. at least 100 meters long, 20 in height. The shape was an elongated oval with multifaceted protrusions on the sides. As if geometric shapes were attached to the main body, the angles were sharp, mathematically precise, the lines perfectly straight. Not a single sign of natural formation. The material, God, the material. It shone even in the dim light of our searchlight. Metallic but not steel, not aluminum, not copper. Something with a bluish tint, as if the alloy contains an element that is not in the periodic table. The surface was perfectly smooth, without a single scratch, without a single spot of rust. And the strangest thing, no fouling. At a depth of almost 350 meters, where any surface within a week is covered with a layer of microorganisms, shells, algae, this structure was clean. As if it had been lowered here yesterday, or as if it repelled any form of life. The echo sounder shows that the object is submerged in the bottom sediment to a depth of 3 meters, I said, looking at the instruments. And then it has been lying here for at least thousands of years, Cousteau finished. Maybe tens of thousands, maybe millions. It's impossible. The impossible is what is happening right now. Victor, at 330 meters we came closer and I saw symbols. There were signs applied all over the surface of the structure, not carved, not engraved, as if cast together with the material, geometric shapes, complex patterns, interweaving of lines, nothing like any known language. Hieroglyphs, not cuneiform, not runes, something completely alien. And the symbols were moving, I swear they were moving. When you look straight on, they seem static. In your peripheral vision, you see them floating, flowing into each other, forming new patterns. My head spun. I looked away, but the feeling remained, as if these symbols had penetrated my brain, written somewhere deep in the subconscious. Tay sat in the half-existence of the suit, clutching his head in his hands. Sobs were escaping from his throat. I don't want to see this, he repeated. Take it away, take me back. Cousteau ignored him. He was completely focused on the structure, running his hand along the glass of the porthole as if trying to touch it. Lower me another 10 meters. I want to get closer. Monsieur Cousteau, this is dangerous, I objected. We don't know what it is. It could be emitting radiation, it could be unstable, maybe lower it, he repeated harshly. I pressed the balance tank lever. The biscuit banked and began to descend slowly. 335 m 340. We hovered 5 meters above the surface of the object. Now I could see even more detail. The seams between the sections were barely noticeable, but discernible. Small, perfectly round holes about 20 centimeters in diameter. Something like portholes or nozzles or sensors and a pulsation. Weak. Almost imperceptible, but I felt it with my whole body. This thing was not dead, not active, but not dead either. As if in standby mode, sleeping, but ready to wake up. Turn on the manipulator, Cousteau ordered. What? No, this is madness. Turn it on. I want to take a sample of the material. Monsieur Cousteau, we don't know how it will react. This could be dangerous. He turned to me. There was a fanatical gleam in his eyes. Victor, do you understand what we have found? This is proof. Proof that we are not alone, that someone was here before us. Maybe millions of years ago, maybe they are still here somewhere. We must know, we must know. I looked at the instruments. Radiation levels are within normal limits. Water temperature 4, pressure 35 atmospheres. All the bathyscaphe systems were functioning normally. No obvious threats, but fear. A primal animal fear screamed inside me. Go away, swim away, rise up, don't touch this. I ignored the fear. He activated the manipulator. The suit's mechanical arm extended from the hull. 3 metal fingers, controlled by a joystick. I slowly directed it toward the surface of the structure, toward the area between the symbols. The hand moved carefully, centimeter by centimeter. 5 meters to contact. 4 suddenly all the instruments went crazy. The compass needle spun like a top. The echo sounder showed a depth of 9,000 meters, then 2, then an error. The temperature gauge jumped to 40, then to -20. What's going on? I shouted. Continue, Cousteau replied coldly. 2 meters, 1/2 a meter, the manipulator touched the surface. In the next split second, the world exploded with light. A blinding flash so bright that I screamed, closed my eyes, and staggered back. Tay was moving. Cousteau froze. When I was able to open my eyes, I saw it. Waves of light spread from the point of contact, ran along the surface of the structure, activating. The symbols, one after another, they lit up blue, then green, then white. The pattern spread faster and faster, covering the entire visible area in seconds. And then a beam emerged from the structure, directed, focused, thin, like a laser pointer. It began to scan the bathyscaphe, passed along the hull, along the portholes, and stopped on me. When the beam touched my face, I felt a presence it is impossible to describe in words. It was as if someone or something looked into my head, did not read my thoughts, but copied. In a split second, it scrolled through my entire life, all my memories. Everything I've ever known, felt, thought, and discarded as unnecessary. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, paralyzed not physically, but mentally. My brain refused to function under this gaze, this scanning, this alien presence in my consciousness. The beam moved to Tay and lingered for about 5 seconds. Tay began to scream, a high-pitched, hysterical cry. He thrashed against the walls of the bathyscaphe, tried to hide in a corner, cover himself with his hands. Then the beam moved to Cousteau and lingered. 10 seconds, 20, 30, I saw Cousteau's face in profile. It was motionless, waxen, his eyes were open but not blinking. His lips were slightly parted, he didn't even seem to be breathing. When the beam finally went out, Cousteau slowly turned his head towards me. His face was empty, absolutely empty, like that of a man who has looked into the abyss and seen what he shouldn't have seen. "Get up," he croaked. "Now, maximum speed, don't look back." I grabbed the emergency ballast release lever and pressed it. The bathyscaphe jerked upward so sharply that we were all thrown. Taillou hit his head on the wall and lost consciousness. Cousteau was holding on to the handrail, looking down at the porthole. I couldn't help but look, so I turned around. The structure had fully activated. Its entire surface was glowing, the symbols were moving, forming patterns, and from it emanated a column of light, pointing upward, following us, like a searchlight tracking a target. "We're being scanned," Cousteau whispered. "They know about us now." "They know we're here. Who are they?" I screamed. He didn't answer, just looked down at the receding source of light, tears streaming down his cheeks. We were ascending at a speed that violated all safety protocols. 2 meters per second instead of the prescribed 30 centimeters. Nitrogen bubbles began to form in my blood. The pain in my joints became unbearable. I screamed, but not from pain, but from terror. At a depth of 100 meters, I lost consciousness. I came to on the deck of the Calypso in a decompression chamber. Through the round window, I saw the worried faces of the crew. Dr. Bernard was shouting something, waving his arms. Next to me, on the bunk, lay Taillou, unconscious, with a bloody bandage on his head. Cousteau was sitting on the floor of the chamber, leaning against the wall. His eyes were open, staring into space. His lips were moving, whispering something in French. I strained, trying to make out the words. They've been watching us from the very beginning. They've always been here. I closed my eyes and fell back into the darkness. And I dreamed of that beam, that structure, those symbols that had burned themselves into my brain and refused to leave. When I woke up again, 8 hours had passed. The Calypso was sailing full speed away from that damned point. Cousteau had locked himself in his cabin and wouldn't come out. Tay was still unconscious. The doctor was fighting for his life, and I lay in the decompression chamber and understood that my life was over. My old life, where I was a scientist, where I believed in a rational explanation for everything. Now I knew we weren't alone, never had been. And the ocean holds secrets more terrible than any nightmare. I lay in the decompression chamber for 22 hours. Dr. Bernard checked my vitals every hour, measured my blood pressure, and took blood samples. My chysanosis had caused complications in both knees and my right shoulder. The pain was hellish, but I barely felt it. The physical pain paled next to the horror that was lodged in my head. When I was finally released, there was a strange silence on deck. The crew worked in silence, avoiding eye contact. The Calypso was heading north toward the Maldives at top speed. The engines roared so loudly that the vibrations could be felt throughout the hull. I limped toward Cousteau's cabin, holding on to the railings. Every step sent a pain through my joints. I knocked on the door. Silence. I knocked again. "Monsieur Cousteau." "This is Victor. I need to talk to you." A long pause, then a dull voice. "Go away. I need answers. What was that down there?" "What did they do to us? I don't know. No one knows." "And it would be better if we never found out?" I pushed the door. It was unlocked. Cousteau was sitting on his bunk, barefoot and wearing only a shirt. His famous Little Red Riding Hood was lying on the floor. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were red, his face was gray. A bottle of cognac stood on the table, half empty. Jacques, even in Cousteau, an icon of sobriety and discipline, was drunk. "Forgive me, I shouldn't have barged in." He waved his hand, inviting me to sit. "Come in, I still can't sleep. When I close my eyes, I see it, that beam, those symbols." "And do you know what's most terrible, Victor?" He looked at me, and there was such pain in his gaze that I looked away. I understood. When the beam scanned me, I understood for a second. Not with my brain, not with logic, but instinctively. This thing isn't a ship, not a base, not a fragment of anything. It's a beacon or a sensor or whatever you call it, but it's transmitting a signal, telling someone that we're here, that we've found it. Who is it telling? And he poured himself a glass of cognac and drank it down in one gulp, along with those who left it. "Maybe millions of years ago, maybe they're long dead, or maybe they're waiting out there somewhere for a signal." And we launched it, Victor. We touched the damn thing and triggered the signal. I felt a chill in my stomach. "Are you serious? This sounds like science fiction." He laughed. "Yesterday I would have called it science fiction, but you saw what I saw. Metal without corrosion, symbols that move, a beam that reads minds. This is real, Victor, damn real. And we have no idea what we've gotten ourselves into." There was a knock at the door. Captain Dupont entered uninvited. His face was grim. "Monsieur Cousteau, we have a problem. The radio operator has received the transmission. A military vessel is intercepting Americans, a U.S. Navy ship. They are demanding that we stop and await their arrival." Cousteau stood up abruptly, staggered, and grabbed the table. "What the hell? We're in international waters. They have no right. They claim we've entered a restricted area, that our expedition has violated the Maritime Research Agreement. Utter nonsense, but they have the weapons and we have a research sub." Cousteau covered his face with his hands. "They know. They already know. God, how fast. I don't understand. Who knows what you're talking about?" Cousteau put Ruthie down and looked at the captain. "Maris, wait for all the records from the dive. All the logs, all the instrument readings, everything immediately." "But Monsieur Cousteau, this is scientific data." "We can't. Wait, or the Americans will take it. And if they take it, they will classify it. And we will never know the truth. But at least they won't get any proof either." Dupont looked at me, then back at Cousteau. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." The captain nodded and left. 10 minutes later, they lit an improvised fire in a metal barrel on deck. I stood by the side and watched the logs, films, and instrument printouts burn. All the information about that dive was turning to ash. Tay was still unconscious. Dr. Bernard said he had a concussion, possibly edema. He needed hospitalization. Cousteau ordered a helicopter from the Maldives to evacuate him. The helicopter arrived 3 hours later. Tay was loaded onto a stretcher, still unconscious. I went over to say goodbye. His face was waxy. A crimson bruise on his forehead from the impact with the wall of the bathyscaphe. In his sleep, he muttered something in French. I didn't understand the words, but his intonation was pleading. As if he were begging for mercy, the helicopter flew away. A black dot melted into the sky. I never saw Philippe Tay again. I only learned years later that he spent 6 months in a psychiatric clinic in Marseille, then left the profession, moved to a village in Provence and refused to talk about that day until his death. Towards evening, an Isman appeared on the horizon, gray, massive, with an American flag. It was heading straight for us, its sharp nose cutting the water. The Calypso stopped and cut its engines. We didn't have long to wait. The Americans moored to us an hour later. 6 men descended from the Isthmus, 4 in Navy uniform, 2 in civilian clothes. One of the civilians, a tall man of about a year old with short hair and cold gray eyes, went straight to Cousteau. "Mr. Cousteau, I am Major David Henderson, U.S. Navy Military Intelligence. We need to talk." Cousteau crossed his arms over his chest. "We are in international waters. You have no jurisdiction." Henderson smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "You were diving in a restricted area, an area classified by agreement between 5 countries, including France and the USSR. You violated protocol." "I know nothing of such an agreement." "Of course you don't. It's secret, but ignorance is no excuse. I need all the materials from your dive. All the notes, tapes, samples." Cousteau shrugged. "Burned an hour ago." Henderson didn't flinch. "Then I will take you in for questioning." Cousteau laughed. "Try it. I am a French citizen on a French ship. You don't have the authority." Henderson turned to his men and nodded. 2 of the soldiers drew their weapons and pointed them at us. The rest of the team froze. "Monsieur Cousteau, don't make things difficult. We're going voluntarily. A few hours of conversation and you're free to go." Cousteau looked at me. There was a warning in his gaze. "Be quiet. Whatever happens, be quiet." "Okay, I'll go, but my team remains here." "Of course, we only need you." I stepped forward. "I was on that dive too." "I saw it too." Henderson looked at me with interest. "A Soviet scientist, right? Viktor Solovyov, Ph.D., Institute of Oceanology? We know about you. Don't worry, your people will talk to you." He nodded to the second civilian. He approached Captain Dupont and said something quietly. Dupont turned pale and nodded. Cousteau was led to the Isthmus. I watched his silhouette disappear behind the door of the wheelhouse. The American ship pulled away, picked up speed, and headed south. Captain Dupont approached me. "Victor, pack your things. You and the rest of your Soviet comrades are being evacuated. A plane from the Maldives will arrive, pick you up in Colombo, and from there a flight to Moscow." "When?" "Tomorrow morning." "An order from your embassy." I didn't argue. I understood what was behind it. The KGB had probably learned of our dive from the Americans. Now they wanted to talk to me alone without witnesses. That night I didn't sleep, standing on the deck, looking at the stars. The ocean was calm, the black water lapping gently. Somewhere down there, 200 miles to the south, at a depth of 342 meters, lay that structure, transmitting its signal. To whom? Where? Why? In the morning, a seaplane arrived. They put me and 4 other Soviet expedition members inside. No explanations, no goodbyes, just a quick boarding and takeoff. I pressed myself against the window, watching the Calypso shrink below. A white hull on the blue water. The last time I saw this ship, the symbol of my dreams, a symbol of adventure and discovery. Now it symbolized a nightmare I would carry with me for the rest of my life. In Colombo, we were met by 2 men in suits who introduced themselves as embassy employees, but I immediately realized they were KGB. They had a special demeanor, a special look, appraising and cold. "Comrades, you will follow us." "Any questions about your work on the French ship?" We silently boarded a black limousine with diplomatic license plates. They took us not to the airport but to the Soviet embassy. There we were separated. I was led to a windowless office on the 3rd floor. Just a table, 3 chairs, and a portrait of Brezhnev on the wall. A man of about 50 in a gray suit sat at the table. A folder lay in front of him. He didn't introduce himself, simply nodded toward the chair opposite. "Sit down, Comrade Solovyov. My name is Igor Petrovich. Tell me about the dive of August 27th. Detail every detail." I told you everything. The coordinates, the depth, the structure, the symbols, the beam, the scanning. Igor Petrovich listened silently, without interrupting, occasionally making notes in a notebook. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "An interesting story? Very interesting. It sounds like science fiction." "It's true. I saw it with my own eyes." I have no doubt that you saw something. The question is what exactly? Perhaps it was a secret facility, an American submarine base or eavesdropping equipment. The symbols could have been encryption. I shook my head. No, it was inhuman. The material, the form, the technology, it's something else. Igor Petrovich opened the folder and took out several sheets of paper. You know, Comrade Solovyov, you're not the first to tell such stories. Over the past 20 years, there have been 23 incidents similar to yours. Warships, research vessels, submarines. They found strange objects on the ocean floor, always at great depth, always in remote places. He handed me a photograph, black and white, grainy but discernible. An underwater object similar to the one we found. Different shape, smaller, but definitely artificial. Where is it? The Atlantic, 1968. The American submarine Scorpion was investigating an anomaly similar to yours. Afterward, contact with it was lost. The submarine was found several months later, washed aground off the coast of Portugal. The entire crew was dead. The cause of death was unknown. There were no injuries on the bodies, but they all died at the same time. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. Do you think this is connected? Igor Petrovich put the photograph back in the folder. I'm not thinking anything, I'm just stating the facts. The fact is, these objects are dangerous, very dangerous. And the governments of various countries have agreed not to approach them, not to study them, not to disseminate information about them. Why? Because we don't understand what we're dealing with. Because attempts to study them end in death. Because perhaps there are things humanity isn't ready to know. This is absurd. We are scientists, we must seek the truth. He looked at me for a long moment. Comrade Solovyov, you are young, idealistic, and that's good, but there is a truth that kills. And there are secrets that are better left secret. You will sign a non-disclosure agreement. You will never, under any circumstances, tell anyone about that dive. That's an order. And if I refuse, then your career is over. You will be transferred to another job. Perhaps the archives, perhaps something even less pleasant. You have a choice, Comrade Solovyov. Sign and continue your life or refuse and regret it. I looked at him, at the folder with photographs, at Brezhnev's portrait. I understood that there was really no choice. I signed. I spent the next 3 weeks in a closed sanatorium near Moscow, officially for treatment of kissing sickness, but in reality for isolation and observation. Every day a doctor came, checked my condition, asked questions. Every evening a different person came, without introducing himself, asking the same questions about the dive. Over and over, checking that the story hadn't changed, that details hadn't been added. I was alone in a room with barred windows. They didn't give me books, there was no television. Only me, my memory, and the nightmares. Because every night I dreamed of those symbols, that beam, that presence in my head. I woke up in a cold sweat, screaming, and the orderlies injected me with a sedative. After 3 weeks, they released me, gave me a health certificate, a new assignment, and a stern warning. I returned to Moscow, to my communal room, to my old life. But nothing was the same. I was transferred from the Institute of Oceanology. A new place to work, the archives of the Academy of Sciences. Systematization of old documents, cataloging, paperwork. No expeditions, no dives, no sea. I was 29 years old and my career was dead. I tried to contact Cousteau, wrote letters to Calypso. They returned unopened with the note, addressee not found. I called the Cousteau office in Paris. The secretary politely explained that Monsieur Cousteau was very busy, could not take the call, but would pass on a message. But he never called back. The only thing left me was a memory and a strange feeling that did not go away. The feeling that I was being watched. Not by people, but by something else. As if that beam had left a mark, and now I was marked forever. A year later, I met Georgy Petrov, the geologist who had been with me on that expedition, on the street. He was walking along Arbat, I called out to him. He turned around, saw me, and turned pale. "Victor, hello?" "Georgy, how are you?" "Haven't seen you in a while?" He glanced around as if checking if we were being followed. Listen, let's not do this. You understand, we can't communicate. Why? We were colleagues? That's in the past now, and it's better to let it stay in the past. I'm sorry. He walked away quickly, almost running. I stood in the middle of the street among passers-by and felt like a leper. 5 years had passed. I worked in the archives, living a quiet, gray life. I married a colleague, Natasha, and had a daughter, Anna, the ordinary life of an ordinary Soviet person. But at night, I still dreamed about that dive. In 1981, rumors reached me. Philippe Tay committed suicide, hanged himself in his house in Provence without leaving a note. Michel Cordier, a hydrologist from Calypso, was in a car accident and died instantly. André Laban, an engineer, drowned under strange circumstances while vacationing in the Mediterranean. Too many coincidences, too many deaths of people who were on Calypso that summer. I began to be afraid. I checked the car before every trip, looked over my shoulder on the street. Didn't go too close to the edge of the metro platform, but no one came for me. The years passed, I grew older, my daughter grew up, life went on. Kissing sickness made itself felt. My joints ached with changes in the weather. Climbing stairs was difficult. I retired at 55, moved to a dacha outside Moscow, and continued to follow Cousteau. From afar, through magazines and TV shows, I saw him aging, changing. His films had changed. Less deep-sea diving, more ecology, ocean conservation. In interviews he said strange things. In the fall of 1976, a month after returning to Moscow, I was called back. Neither to the embassy nor to the sanatorium, but to the building on Lubyanka, gray and gloomy. I entered through the main entrance and showed my pass to the guard. I was led down long corridors smelling of bleach and fear to an office on the 4th floor. 3 people were sitting there, a colonel in a KGB uniform, a man in civilian clothes, and a female stenographer. On the desk lay a thick folder marked Top Secret. The colonel, a strong man of about 60 with iron teeth, pointed to a chair. "Comrade Solovyov, sit down. We would like to clarify some details of your dive report. We have additional information." He opened a folder, took out several black and white photographs, and handed me the first one. A satellite image, grainy but distinguishable. A section of the ocean, a white dot, Calypso. And nearby in the water, a strange dark spot of irregular shape. This was taken 3 hours after your dive. The Cosmos 954 satellite passed over this area and recorded an anomaly. Do you see this spot? Yes, it wasn't there before your dive, appeared afterward, and disappeared 12 hours later. Our analysts believe it's a thermal anomaly. The object on the bottom heated up by 5 after your contact with it. This means we activated it. The question is, what exactly did you activate and what consequences did it lead to? A man in civilian clothes, young, about 15 years old, a man with intelligent eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses, spoke up. "Comrade Solovyov, we've analyzed your story and compared it with other cases. We have data on 20 similar incidents over the past 30 years. They all have common features, depth from 300 to 500 meters. Objects of regular geometric shape, no corrosion, strange symbols, activation on contact." He pulled out another photograph, an underwater image taken, judging by the quality by a deep-sea vehicle. An object similar to ours but of a different configuration, more like a pyramid with a truncated top. This was found by a Soviet oceanographic expedition in the Black Sea in 1962 at a depth of 407 meters. When they tried to raise a sample of the material, the vehicle failed. All electronic systems burned out simultaneously. The bathyscaphe crew miraculously escaped. He pulled out more photographs one after another. Different oceans, different shapes, but the essence is the same. Artificial structures, technologically impossible, purpose unknown. How many are there? We know of 3, but estimates suggest there could be hundreds, thousands, scattered throughout the world's oceans, most at depths inaccessible to exploration. The colonel slammed his fist on the table. "And here's what we found out, Comrade Solovyov. After every contact with these objects, strange things happen. Instruments, compasses, radars, and sonars begin to malfunction in the dive area. Fish disappear, unexplained ship accidents occur, and people involved in Vantage either die under mysterious circumstances or go crazy. I swallowed. Do you think it's connected? I don't think so. I know, we have statistics. Of the 208 people who had direct contact with these objects, 73 died within 5 years. Another 41 were admitted to psychiatric hospitals. That can't be a coincidence. And the rest? The rest are alive, but many report strange symptoms, nightmares, hallucinations, paranoia, the feeling of being watched. Some claim to hear voices. I went cold. What kind of voices? Unintelligible in an unknown language or without words at all. Just sensations transmitted directly to the brain. Comrade Solovyov, have you experienced similar symptoms? I hesitated. Should I tell the truth? Admit that I see those symbols every night? That I sometimes feel someone else's presence in my head, or should I lie and say everything is normal? I have nightmares sometimes, but that's normal after stress. The colonel leaned forward. Comrade Solovyov, we are on your side. We are trying to understand what you're facing. But this requires complete honesty. If you're hiding something, it could be dangerous for you and for those around you. The man in glasses added, we had a case in 1970. A submarine lieutenant was participating in the exploration of one of the objects. 2 months after contact, he began to behave strangely. He said he was receiving instructions. He tried to steal a submarine to return to the facility. They stopped him, but he committed suicide in the holding cell. He left a note. They're calling me back. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Do you think these facilities can control people? We don't know, but it seems they leave some kind of trace, a mark. And this mark can influence behavior, the psyche. We're studying it, but we don't yet understand the mechanism. The colonel closed the folder. That's why you'll be under surveillance. Regular medical examinations, psychological tests, reports on your well-being. If you notice anything unusual, report it immediately. This is not a punishment, Comrade Solovyov. It's your protection and ours. For how long? Until we're sure you pose no threat or until we find a way to neutralize the effect. And if you don't find one? He looked at me gravely. Then you'll spend the rest of your life under surveillance. The alternative is worse. I was released after 3 hours of interrogation. They gave me a contact number to call every week. They warned me that trying to escape would be considered treason. I walked through Moscow at night and the city seemed alien, hostile. People on the streets were potential agents tailing me. Every car was a potential tail. Paranoia, they said. A symptom of contact with an object. But how can you distinguish paranoia from a real threat when you're actually being followed? The next months were a nightmare. Every week I called the number provided, reporting on my health. Every month I went for an examination at a closed clinic. The psychiatrist asked questions. I took tests, gave blood. They looked for changes, deviations, signs of influence. They found nothing. Physically, I was healthy. Psychological tests showed mild depression and increased anxiety, but within the normal range for someone who had experienced trauma. They couldn't detect the mark they talked about, but I felt it every day, especially at night. I close my eyes and see those symbols. They move, forming patterns that are almost clear, but not quite, as if on the edge of comprehension, but you can't quite reach them. Sometimes I woke up with that someone was in the room, looking at me, studying me, but the room was always empty. My wife slept next to me, my daughter in her crib, no one else. But the feeling of presence did not go away. A year passed, 2, 3, and the surveillance weakened. I had to call once a month and have an examination every 6 months. Life settled into a routine. I almost got used to the nightmares, to the feeling of someone else's presence. It became a part of me, like a scar that will never fully heal. In 1983, that bespectacled man from the KGB called and introduced himself as Alexei Ivanovich, although it was probably a pseudonym. Comrade Solovyov, we need to meet. I have information that will interest you. We met in Gorky Park on a bench by the pond. He brought a folder. I took several sheets of paper out of it. I followed the fate of your expedition. Jacques-Yves Cousteau, Philippe Tail, the rest of the team. Do you want to know what happened to them? I nodded. Tail is dead. Suicide in 1981. Cartier and Laban are also dead. Accidents. Captain DuPont died of a heart attack in 1982. Dr. Bernard moved to Africa. He works in a clinic in Zaire. He is from Pils. Of the 8 people who knew about the dive, only you and Cousteau are alive. And how is Cousteau? He lives, makes films, but he has changed. Have you seen his last interview? He handed me a clipping from a French magazine. An interview with Cousteau. Translation into Russian. I read, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. There are depths that man should not reach. There are secrets that should remain secret. We are too presumptuous in thinking that we can know everything. The ocean refuses to be known, and those who try to wrest its secrets by force pay the price. He knows, I whispered. He remembers and tries to warn. Alexei Ivanovich nodded. We believe that Cousteau was visited. People from the secret services, perhaps from an international organization we know little about, demanded silence and threatened. He signed the same documents as you, but unlike you, he is a public figure. He cannot simply remain silent, so he speaks in hints, warnings. What organization? We only know the abbreviation M, apparently, an international structure uniting the secret services of several countries. Their task is to control information about these objects, prevent panic, eliminate witnesses if necessary, he looked at me seriously. Comrade Solovyov, you are alive only because a Soviet citizen under the protection of the USSR. If you were French or American, most likely an accident would have happened to you. But we will not let anyone harm you. However, in exchange, we demand complete silence. No recordings, no stories, even to loved ones. Understood? Understood. He stood up and took the folder. Live in peace, Comrade Solovyov. Forget about that day for your own good. He left, vanished into the crowd of strollers. I sat on a bench, looking at the pond, at the children feeding the ducks. Ordinary, peaceful life. And somewhere out there, in the ocean depths, lay objects that shouldn't exist. And someone very powerful was spending enormous resources to hide the truth. Why? What were they afraid of? Panic or something more? I continued to follow Cousteau from afar through magazines and the rare television programs shown on Soviet television. With each passing year, he changed more and more. The man who had spent his whole life seeking the depths now avoided them. In 1985, his film about coral reefs was released. Beautiful, informative, but superficial. The maximum depth of filming was 30 meters. Not a single dive below 50. Critics noted that Cousteau had lost his former courage and become cautious, but I understood he was afraid again, to encounter what I once encountered. In 1987, an interview with Cousteau on French television was broadcast in the Soviet Union. I recorded it on tape and listened to it many times, trying to catch between the lines what he couldn't say outright. The journalist asked about the future of oceanography, about new deep-sea diving technologies. Cousteau answered carefully, choosing his words. Technology is developing, that's true. Soon we will be able to reach depths that were previously inaccessible. But I wonder, is it necessary? There are boundaries that should not be crossed. Not out of fear, but out of respect. The ocean is alive, it is not just water and fish. It feels, it remembers, and it is not always happy about the invasion. The journalist laughed, deciding that it was a metaphor, but I heard something more in Cousteau's voice, a warning, a plea. In 1991, an event happened that turned my world upside down again. The Soviet Union collapsed. The KGB was transformed into the FSB. Many archives were opened. Censorship weakened. I thought, maybe now I can tell, maybe the time has come. I wrote a letter to Cousteau, long, detailed. I told him about my life after that dive, about observation, about fears. I asked if he could help, if together we could tell the world the truth. I sent it through an acquaintance who worked in the trade mission in France. asked him to deliver it personally to Cousteau, bypassing secretaries. 2 months later, a reply arrived. A short letter, handwritten in French. A friend translated it. Victor, I remember you. I remember that day. I see it in my dreams every night, but I can't speak. Not because I'm afraid for myself. I'm old, 81, death doesn't scare me. But they will come for my family, for those who are dear to me. They have no conscience, no boundaries. They eliminated people for less. I beg you, live quietly. Forget it, it's the only way to survive. Yours, Jacques-Yves. I sat in the kitchen, holding this letter and crying. An old, gray-haired man who had just turned 54 cried like a child because he realized that we are prisoners. Prisoners of knowledge that cannot be conveyed. Prisoners of fear that does not let go. In 1993, at an oceanology conference in Vienna, I accidentally met Pierre Dubout, a French oceanographer who had worked with Cousteau in the 1980s. Over a glass of wine after the official part, we got to talking. You were on Calypso? He asked. Yes, 1976. He nodded understandingly. Then you know about what happened? I froze. I know what. He looked around, made sure no one could hear us, and leaned closer. Cousteau is obsessed. For the last few years, he's been talking about nothing but this, that there are artifacts of extraterrestrial origin at the bottom of the oceans, that something studied our planet millions of years ago and left its traces, that governments know about this and are hiding it. They think he's crazy, but I've seen his eyes when he talks about it. It's not madness, it's knowledge. Terrible knowledge? Did he tell you anything? Details. Pierre shook his head. Not to me, but I once saw people come to him, Americans, judging by their accents in suits with diplomats. The conversation was short. Cousteau turned pale, locked himself in his cabin for a day, then destroyed all the recordings of that conversation. He said only one thing. They reminded me that silence is my duty. Who they are? I don't know. But after that visit, Cousteau changed even more. He stopped descending deeper than 100 meters, abandoned several expeditions that were planned to deep-sea zones. He said he was too old, but I saw that it wasn't age, it was fear. We drank another glass and were silent. Then Pierre said quietly, Sometimes I think we stand on the threshold of something big, that these objects are only the beginning, that soon humanity will face a truth for which it is not ready, and Cousteau knows this. He saw the future the day he touched one of them, and it terrifies him. We parted. I returned to Moscow to my quiet life as an archivist, but his words haunted me. If Cousteau is right, if these objects are truly extraterrestrial, then it changes everything. Our understanding of history, our place in the universe, our future. In June of 1997, I heard the news on the radio that Jacques had died in Cousteau. 87 years old. A long, eventful life. The official cause was heart failure. I sat in the kitchen, listening to the obituary, and understood that an era had passed. A legendary man who revealed the beauty of the oceans to the world and took with him their most terrible secret. I went to the closet and took out an old box of memories. Photographs from Calypso, expedition certificates, notes I had secretly taken despite prohibitions. Everything that remained from that summer of 1976, and I decided someday I would tell. Maybe not now, maybe when I'm very old and have nothing to lose, but I will tell because the truth must not die with me. November of 1997, 5 months after Cousteau's death. I was sitting at a dacha near Moscow, sorting through old books when the postman brought a parcel from France. Sender, DuPont and Partners, Paris. I tore open the package with trembling hands. Inside was a cover letter in French with a Russian translation and a sealed envelope. The letter from the lawyer was formal. According to the will of Monsieur Jacques-Yves Cousteau, this envelope should be delivered to you after his death. The envelope was made of thick paper, sealed with red sealing wax. On the front was an inscription in Russian in a rough handwriting addressed to Viktor Solovyov. Open after my death for those who were there. I sat for several minutes, hesitating to open it. I understood that inside was the final truth, the one Cousteau could not tell in life. And this truth would change everything. Finally, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. 4 pages, written in tiny Russian handwriting. Cousteau had learned Russian to work with Soviet scientists and wrote this letter in my language. I began to read, and with each line, the world around me became more and more alien. Dear Victor, if you're reading this, it means I'm dead. Perhaps it's for the best. The burden I carried for 21 years was too heavy. I'm glad I can finally free myself from it. But unfortunately, you will now have to bear it. I apologize for this, but someone must know, someone must remember. After that dive, 2 days after the Americans picked me up from Calypso, people came to me, non-military, civilians, but with more power than the generals. They introduced themselves as representatives of an international organization. They didn't give the full name, only the abbreviation M. I didn't know what it stood for then. I found out later. Majestic Acknowledged Joint Operation. Created in 1952 after a series of incidents involving unidentified objects, it unites the intelligence agencies of the USA, USSR, Great Britain, France, and China. Their task is to monitor information about extraterrestrial artifacts on Earth. Yes, Victor, extraterrestrial. They didn't hide it from me, they said it straight out. The object we found isn't human in origin. It's one of many scattered across the planet's oceans. Sensors or beacons or something else we don't understand. They showed me a secret map, marked Top Secret. It had points marked all over the world's oceans. The Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian, the Arctic. 47 known objects, and those are just the ones that have been discovered. It's estimated there could be hundreds, thousands, all at depths from 300 to 1,000 meters. All have a regular geometric shape. All are made of a material that can't be analyzed by modern methods, and all are activated upon contact. What happens when they're activated? They transmit a signal. Not a radio signal, not electromagnetic, something else that our instruments have difficulty detecting. The direction of the signal is unknown. Duration ranges from a few minutes to a few hours. Then the object goes back to sleep. They don't know who the signal is addressed to. There are 3 theories. The first is that it's a signal to those who left the objects. Somewhere in space, perhaps light years away, there exists a civilization that placed these sensors millions of years ago and is waiting for reports. When a sensor is activated, it reports there is intelligent life on the planet, capable of reaching the depths. The second theory, the signal is addressed not to space, but to other objects on Earth. It's a network working in coordination. When one is activated, the others will be. For what purpose, no one knows. The third theory, the most frightening, the objects don't transmit a signal. They receive, wait for commands, and when they are activated, they begin to listen, waiting for instructions from those who created them. And if these instructions come, the people from the major didn't finish the sentence. But I realize that if the instructions come, humanity will face something it is not ready for. They showed me a list, a long list of names. 208 people over 30 years. All had direct contact with the objects. 73 dead, 41 in psychiatric hospitals, the rest under observation. I asked, "Are you killing them?" They said, "No, they die on their own." Some commit suicide, others have accidents that look suspicious but are explainable. Others simply die for no apparent reason, but autopsies show strange things. Changes in the brain, new neural connections that shouldn't be there, microscopic crystals of unknown origin in the prefrontal cortex, as if something had embedded itself in the brain and changed it. They called it a mark. When the beam scans a person, it leaves a mark, changes something at the cellular level. And this mark works, it connects the person to an object, perhaps allows tracking, perhaps influences thoughts, behavior. I asked, "Does that mean I'm marked?" They nodded, and so did Victor and Philip. Everyone who was scanned by the beam. You are no longer fully human. You are partially theirs. I will never forget those words. Partially owned by them. They explained the rules. I must remain absolutely silent. Tell no one about that day. No recordings, no hints. In exchange, they guarantee the safety of my family. If I break them, they won't touch me. but an accident will happen to someone close, my wife, son, grandchildren. They have no conscience when it comes to global security. I signed the documents that were left to me, but I couldn't forget. Every night I saw that object, those symbols, that beam, and I felt the mark like a worm gnawing at my brain from the inside. The years went by. I made films, but avoided deep dives. I was afraid of encountering another object, afraid to activate it again. I talked about protecting the oceans, about ecology. I tried to distract people from the depths. If they don't go there, maybe the objects will remain dormant. But technology is developing. Soon people will be able to reach any depth, and they will find objects, dozens, hundreds, and activate them all at once. And then, I don't know what will happen then, but I have a premonition. Nothing good. At the end of the letter, the coordinates are precise to the second. 423 south latitude, 7257 east longitude, the place where we found the object, and a postscript. I never returned there. I didn't have the courage to find out more. I didn't have the courage to take a risk. But you, young people, if you outlive me, will still learn the truth one day. Humanity will not stop. We will go deeper and deeper, and one day we will awaken what sleeps. God grant that we are ready for the consequences. Goodbye, Victor. Remember, we are not alone. We have never been alone. And the ocean knows it. Yours, Jacques-Yves Cousteau. I was sitting at the dacha, holding this letter, and the sun was setting outside the window, red, huge like that morning before the dive. 21 years have passed since that day. I grew old, sat, had grandchildren. Life passed me by, quiet and gray. But now I have a choice. To remain silent, as I promised, to carry the secret into the grave, as Cousteau did, or tell, write down everything I remember, publish it while I'm alive, or leave notes to be found after death. I stood up and went to the window. Moscow outside the city, lights in the distance. The ordinary life of ordinary people who don't know what sleeps in the ocean depths. What awaits there in the darkness, ready to wake up? Should I tell them, or would it be cruel to deprive them of peace, fill them with fear? I sat all night thinking, weighing. By morning, the decision was ripe. I will tell, I will write down everything, every detail of that dive, every word from Cousteau's letter, every fact I've learned over the years. Not for publication now, but for the future, so that someday, when the time comes, people will know the truth. Because Cousteau is right. Humanity will not stop. We will descend deeper and deeper. And one day, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 50, maybe in 100, we will awaken all these objects, activate the entire network. And then the truth will come, answer, from those who left these beacons. From those who watched the Earth for millions of years. From those who waited until we became advanced enough to find their message. And humanity must be ready, must know that we are not alone, that the ocean holds secrets that are ancient to our civilization, that we stand on the rock of something huge, incomprehensible, possibly dangerous. Now I am 70 years old. My daughter has grown up, my grandchildren are studying at university, my wife died 3 years ago. I no longer have loved ones who can be used against me. I am free to tell. And I am telling you who reads or listens to this. On August 27, 1976, I was diving to the bottom of the Indian Ocean. There, at a depth of 342 meters, we found something that shouldn't be there. An artifact of an unknown civilization. A beacon, a sensor, a message. It scanned us, left a mark, and sent a signal. Where? I don't know. To whom? I don't know. I don't know why. But I know one thing. We awakened something, attracted attention. And one day the answer will come. I will not live to see this day, but you, young people, will. And when will this happen? When the sky is filled with lights that were not there before, when the oceans begin to glow, when objects wake up all at once, remember my words. Jacques even dived to the bottom in Cousteau, and after that he never spoke of one place again. Not because he forgot, not because he did not want to, but because he knew that some secrets are too dangerous for humanity. But silence will not save us. True, maybe. I wrote down this story. The coordinates are attached. The documents I was able to save are attached. Cousteau's letter is attached. Everything else is burned, classified, hidden, but the memory remains. My memory. The last memory of the day when humanity touched something ancient, powerful, alien. And this is only the beginning. I finished writing, put the notes in a metal box, sealed it, hid it in a safe place, left instructions to my granddaughter Anna. If something happens to me, find this box, read it, decide what to do next. I went out onto the porch of the dacha. The night was clear, the stars were bright. Somewhere out there, between these stars, maybe there is an answer or a question or a sentence. I lived with this knowledge for 21 years. How much longer I will live, I don't know. But now I am calm. The burden is lifted. The truth is written down. The duty is fulfilled. Where is my place in this story? I am just a witness. The last living witness of that day. Cousteau died, Tay died, the rest died or are silent. I speak because silence is a betrayal of future generations who have the right to know what awaits them. The depths of the ocean hold secrets, ancient, powerful, terrifying. We touched one of them, and it touched us, left a mark, changed something inside. I feel this mark every day, every night. It is a part of me now, a connection with something beyond comprehension. Sometimes, in the moments between sleep and wakefulness, I feel a calling, quiet, insistent, a call to return, to descend again, to touch again. I will not return. Too old, too tired, too afraid. But someone will return. Humanity will not stop. We are explorers, pioneers, madmen who climb where we should not. And one day we will pay for this curiosity or be rewarded. Who knows, maybe these objects are not a threat, maybe an invitation. Maybe those who left them are waiting for us to prove our readiness, to reach a certain level of development, to show that we are worthy of knowing the truth. Maybe, or maybe this is a trap, a snare set millions of years ago, and we, foolish, arrogant people, are stepping into it step by step. Time will tell. In the meantime, I sit on the porch of my dacha, looking at the stars and thinking about that day. About Cousteau, who died with a secret on his lips, about Tay, who couldn't take it anymore and left on his own, about the others who also knew and kept silent, and about that object. It still lies there, at a depth of 342 meters at 423 south latitude, 7257 east longitude. Is it asleep or awake and working, transmitting its signal into the unknown? I don't know, but one day we will find out. We will all find out. And I hope that humanity will be ready for an answer. End of recording. Viktor Solovyov, former PhD, former oceanographer, witness. Moscow, winter of 1998. If you are reading this, it means I am dead. Forgive me for leaving this burden with you, but someone must carry it on. Seek the truth in the ocean depths, in classified archives, in the words of those who knew and kept silent. And when you find it, decide for yourself, tell the world or hide it again. I have made my choice.